mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 4 of Amazon Prime's The Rings of Power, entitled The Great Wave. The Great Wave here, I think in a very obvious way, is referring to the literal wave that we see in the Queen Regent's dream at the beginning, this wave that takes over Numenor. She speaks later in the episode about Galadriel's arrival triggering the beginning of this wave. But I also kind of wonder if this wave is metaphorical. Like, we are talking about a dream here. Could this be like a wave, as in like a wave of an army that comes, which we know obviously is going to happen. Maybe not in this, maybe not in this season of the show, but we know that, we know from the Lord of the Rings film what happens with Isildur, how his story ends, and everything that happens with the ring and Sauron, and we know that we're heading toward that point. So I also wonder too if the wave is metaphorical and that she dreams it as this giant water wave that destroys Numenor, but it could be an actual army. But I also want to mention up front, I want to apologize for getting this video out late. I was kind of under the weather over the weekend. Even though I'm forcing myself to get up here and do this right now, my throat's a little scratchy. Forgive me if I'm sniffling a lot. My voice is going to be a little bit off. I feel for the most part okay, as far as like my day-to-day, but recording these videos is going to be a little iffy. I'm still a little congested, but that's why I'm getting this out late. I had a rough weekend trying to, push through this cold. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to my patrons. I'm not going to be doing this every single video, every single week. The patrons are always going to be in the episode description every week, but I just want to, anytime I get new ones, I kind of want to shout them out on like the big videos, the Rings of Power, the House of the Dragon, Industry, like those ones. I always want to make sure I shout out the patrons. So shout out to Delvin Cox, Brett Factual, Dez, Justice Smith Williams, Brian Turner, and Dancing Lights so far. If you're interested in the Patreon, there's a link in the description, and there's a video in my list of videos called Major Announcement that breaks down everything about the Patreon. So I want to talk about this episode because I'm reaching a point of frustration with this show. I don't know if I've ever watched a show with such a slow pace. Like, I mean, like, this thing moves forward a centimeter every week. And what I want to pose to you guys, kind of like as a question, if someone were to ask you, okay, so we know the main characters here. We're looking at Galadriel, we're looking at Arondir, Elrond, what's it, Halbrand. If somebody were to ask you, hey, we're 4 episodes in right now, and each of these episodes have been over an hour, so we're probably about 4.5 hours of content here, and someone were to ask you, hey, tell me what's happened in Arondir's storyline so far. How many sentences do you think you need to explain that? How far Arondir's storyline has moved in 4.5 hours? Even more so, think about the fact that I just ran off all the major characters and I didn't mention the fucking Harfoots because they've done they've done nothing with the Harfoots. They didn't even show up in this episode. If I asked you to tell me about the Harfoot storyline, you'd be like, yeah, a stranger crashed down and they don't know who it is yet. They're migrating. That's it. In 4.5 hours. Like, this show is moving at a ridiculously slow pace to the point of where it's almost becoming a trial to get through the episodes. It's one thing to have a show where all you think about is that next episode. What's going to happen? You ponder what you just saw. You ponder what's going to happen in the next episode. Then you might have a show where you're not as enthusiastic about it, but you still look forward to it each week, which is what this kind of started out as, which kind of ended after episode 2. And now I'm to the point where I barely give a fuck. Like, I don't even know. I'm going to keep watching it, but I can't even promise that I'm going to continue to cover this show on this channel because I'm so bored with it right now. It is going too fucking slow. And again, I see what it's doing. I see what it's setting up. I see these plot lines, particularly at the end of this episode, really converging. But 4.5 hours to get to a place that I feel we probably could have got to in an episode or two. And it's like these incremental little teeny tiny steps forward each week. It's growing just just it's so tedious. And there's like I'm gonna talk about it in a little bit, but there's a scene here that felt long as shit, and virtually nothing came out of it. It was just words, just babble for the most part. And I don't know. The show is starting to wear on me. These last 2 episodes were not that great. I mean, if I'm being honest, all 4 of the episodes are not been that great. They've ranged from, I think they exist in to that was fine. That's like the range of episodes here. There's been nothing bad, but there's been nothing really good either. And I don't know, man. If you guys are really into this so far, that's great. But for me, the pace is just too fucking slow so far. And then it doesn't help when you have something going up against it, this unofficial rivalry between this show and House of the Dragon. And House of the Dragon is knocking it out of the fucking park every week and moving this show along at a perfect pace. And then we the next day, this coming 2 days after watching something like this that's just moving at a snail's pace. So, yeah, trying my patience with this one. But I want to talk about this episode, and I want to talk about some of the scenes that I think are going to propel this plot forward and are playing a big role in how these storylines are going to converge over the rest of this season. So, first thing I want to talk about is this scene with Galadriel and the Queen Regent. I fucking hate Galadriel. Like, Galadriel is like, it's been a long time since I've hated a character this much. I've never seen someone so arrogant, so entitled. Like, I called her a Karen last week. She goes full fucking Karen. I mean, making demands of the Queen Regent, talking down to her, diminishing her, being insulting, being arrogant, being dismissive. Like, oh my God. Like, who walks into someone else's nation and talks to their leader this way? Only an arrogant fucking piece of shit like Galadriel. I will admit, I was somewhat satisfied to see her get thrown in jail for what she did. But by that point, I was already so irritated with the obnoxiousness of and entitlement of this character that even though she got, like, this played out the way it should have. Like, if she had been able to walk away, I'd have been like, yo, fuck this show, man. Like, who does that? But, so the fact that she got thrown in jail, it played out how it should have. But, man, like, what an obnoxious character, man. So she wants the Queen Regent to help against what she feels is this forthcoming battle with Sauron. And the Queen ain't interested. And she Galadriel demands an audience with her father. And not just like, I want to talk to your father. She says it in like a way like, I want to talk to a motherfucker with actual authority around this bitch, not your weak ass. Like, that was the energy that she brought. She was like, there's a tempest in me that will not be quelled. I don't know what the fuck she said, but it was something crazy where it's like the medieval times version of the medieval times version of like, I'm not even listening to your bitch ass. Like, that's what that was. And oh, it was so obnoxious. But we also see Isildur intentionally get kicked off of the Sea Guard. You know, he's supposed to be doing, I don't know what the fuck he's supposed to be doing. I don't know how to sail, but he's supposed to be doing something with this rope, and he lets it go intentionally with the hope of that he would get kicked off, because we already know he doesn't want to do it. But for some reason, this guy kicks off his friends too, which, I mean, this is a plot armor, I guess, for the friends to be protected. I guess not plot armor because they didn't save them, but like, they were dismissed for plot reasons, like not because they did anything wrong. Like, I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, well, for one, you gonna kick him off the ship for his first mistake that he even says, like, I've seen you do this 100 times. Like, okay. So you've seen him do it 100 times, he fucks it up once, and now you're like, get the fuck out of here. But again, the guy is assuming he did it on purpose, which he did. So I can see kicking Isildur out, but like kicking his friends out too, like, what did they do? Like, but they're needed to go along with Isildur, so plot reasons. But never mind if it makes sense or not, but plot reasons. And then there's a long scene between Arondir and Adar. This is the scene that I was talking about earlier. This scene, I actually, and truth be told, I don't even know if this was a long scene. It felt like a long scene. We meet Adar. It is the guy that plays Benjen Stark on Game of Thrones, with a fully shaven face, and he just blabbers and don't say shit. The only thing he says is of any kind of meaning is that he feels like he's not a god yet. And I think that's an interesting statement because I kind of feel like it makes me think that he's not Sauron anymore because I feel like Sauron wouldn't think that he's not a god. So I feel like this guy's not Sauron. He might just be another minion of Sauron, like Morgoth? Yeah. Just another minion of Sauron, maybe. But this conversation, it's just him just babbling, just saying nothing and talking and talking. And eventually he says, I have a message that I want you to give. And we don't even find out what the fucking message is in that scene. So I'm watching this scene, I'm like, he did all that talking, and all I got out of it is that he has a message. Not even, here's a message. Even though I said all this other talking beforehand that don't matter, I do have a message that I want you to give. Here it is. We don't even get the message. We just get the knowledge that a message exists. Man, I like that scene frustrated me, and I think that scene is indicative of the problems with this show. Lots of time spent for very little progress. That was what this scene was, and that's what this show has been in these first 4.5 hours. Lots and lots of time, very little progress, massive emphasis on spectacle. Moving on, Theo disobeys his mother, Bronwyn, by going back to town to try to get some supplies. He's got a wheelbarrow of like rice or something. I don't know how many people he thinks that's gonna feed or how long that's gonna last, but they've only got enough supplies to fit in a wheelbarrow. And his homeboy, who's a piece of shit, this guy takes off once it starts to get a little overcast. Theo's in there scooping up like grain off the floor, and orc comes in, and this portion I do like when he hides in the well. And the orcs are running around. It's getting dark. They're looking for him. They know he has the sword hilt, so the tension is up at this moment. And but then he does kind of manage to escape, and he almost manages to escape. But that was even ridiculous. Like it felt like an old video game. How like if you're playing a video game, if you're trying to avoid people in the video game, all you need is for them to not be in their line of sight. Like if a person is walking and they make a turn and they are no longer looking directly in your direction, you can then go that way and they'll be none the wiser. And we see him going through this shit like it's like a Pac-Man game. Like as soon as somebody turns their back, he starts moving. And it's like the way that he was avoiding being seen was so implausible to me in this moment that, I don't know, I rolled my eyes. But he almost escapes, but he doesn't. Before he can be killed, Arondir saves him. And we will talk about Arondir again in a moment. Now, the stuff in this episode that I like the most is the stuff involving Elrond, Durin, and his wife Disa. Elrond questions Disa about Durin's whereabouts, and she lies about what he's doing. And he calls out every aspect of her lie. Like, if he's doing this, why is this here? If he's doing this, if he's gonna be gone this long, why are you making this? And you could tell by the look on her face that she's been caught, but she comes up with a lie quickly, answers all of his questions. Answers that seem very feasible, like and Elrond lays off, but then we see him eavesdropping via eyeball. Like I think we're meant to take from this, even though he has ridiculously big ears, that he wasn't listening, he was reading their lips, using his eyes. They talked about elf vision, like one of my favorite lines in Lord of the Rings, because it felt like an insult at the time, but now it makes sense. Is like, I think Aragorn says something to Legolas. He's like, what do your elf eyes see? Like, it sounds like, like you say to something like your friend, like, what's your black ass thinking about that? like what's your elf ass looking at? That's what that felt like. I always thought that line was funny. But it speaks to the fact that the elves have good vision. So we hear Durin and Disa having the conversation, and then the way the camera shifts to focusing on Elrond and his mouth kind of moving along with theirs, I think we're meant to glean that he was reading her lips, and we're reading their lips, and he figures out what mind Durin is actually at. He shows up, and I was interested in the fact that Durin assumed that was the reason that Elrond was sit there in the first place, that they already knew about that. Elrond has no clue. He promises to not say shit, and Durin presents him with a piece of mithril. They discover while they've been mining, and he talks about it like this is going to change everything. And he lets Elrond keep a piece of it. And he makes him swear to never tell. I don't think Elrond's going to keep that pact. So this was an interesting point because last week I felt that we were left with a couple mysteries. And one thing this show did do well, as far as when, how I say lots of time spent for very little progress. Last week they presented the mystery that the Queen was hiding something and that Durin was hiding something. We see this in a conversation that Durin has with his father, where he says that he thinks Elrond came for this specific reason. We don't know what it is at the time, but we can tell that the dwarves are hiding something that they think Elrond is there for. The Queen, we think, is hiding something as well, because we have, again, a conversation with her father where she says something like, oh, what we've been fearing has happened, the elf has arrived. And this episode wraps up both of those mysteries, because the Mithril scene lets us know that's what the dwarves were hiding. What they thought Elrond was there for was the Mithril. And then now we find out also what the Queen was hiding, because of the combination of the Great Wave scene, where she then later talks to her father and is like, it was her father. She's talking to Galadriel. And she says that the start of the start of her dream, it starts with Galadriel's arrival. And then we also learned that her father is essentially on his deathbed after Galadriel decides she's just going to break into his bedroom because, I mean, hey, she's a white woman. She can do whatever she wants, right? She breaks into this guy. She's a white woman and the Queen is black. So, like, well, what say does she have? She might be a queen, but she's black. So, I don't want to make it a race thing, but it's fucking funny. She's a fucking Karen. What can I say? So, yeah, but we also learned that her father, the Queen's father, is on his deathbed. Galadriel again tries to convince her to help with this attack on Sauron, or this defense against Sauron. She again refuses, and the Queen refuses, and she also tells Galadriel that Galadriel's basically getting sent home. Like, you up out of here. So Durin agrees to go to Lindon with Elrond, and the interesting aspect of that is that both him and his father suspect that there's something going on, and they're going with him as almost as a means to kind of like figure out what that is. And I also like too in that scene that, he being Durin was pissed off about his father shutting down the mining operation. And after talking to Elrond, he decides to go make amends, and him and his father have a great scene together. And then that's what kind of leads into them two collectively agreeing for Durin to go with Elrond. So Arondir tells Bronwyn that the message from Adar is essentially like, forsake your lands and swear fealty, or he's going to come fuck shit up. And like, again, long time, minimal progress. Long ass scene with Arondir and Adar that essentially amounts to a message exists. We don't even find out what the message is until the end of the fucking episode. And it's something simple as, it's a simple fucking like, bow down to me or I'm gonna fuck you up threat. Like, all of that for that simple ass message. So wrapping up the episode as Galadriel is being sent away. I even made note that she was standing up on this boat while everyone else is sitting down. I think even that speaks to her arrogance. Like, she's too like she can't even lower herself like in a sitting way to be even with everyone else. She has to stand up. That's just me. Like, I already hated the character by this point, so like she could do something that makes perfect sense. But to me, I'm gonna find a reason that's not that reason and use that reason to just pile on. But the leaves start to fall from this tree just as we saw in the Queen's dream at the beginning, and she takes that as a sign. Well, she's told to take it as a sign, and she essentially, it happens off screen, but she essentially calls Galadriel back. She decides to help. She asks for volunteers to want to help as well, and Isildur and his homies volunteer to help. So now we can kind of see how these things are converging. We know that Arondir is kind of piecing things together with what Adar wants, what the orcs are doing, what's happening in the Southlands. We now know that Galadriel is hip to that as well, and she's coming over there with Numenor people and with Isildur, who obviously we know who that is. So those things are kind of starting to come together. Durin, we know, is going to be with Elrond. So like all these people are kind of converging, kind of like the Fellowship. All these people are converging. The Harfoots, whatever the fuck. And things are starting to come together. And I don't know how many episodes there are in this season, but let's just say there's 10, right? That means we have 6 more left. Those 6 have the potential to be great. Like, I am by no means ruling out this show as something that could be great. All I'm saying is after 4 episodes and approximately 4.5 hours, there's been a lot of time and virtually no progress. But now that they put these pieces in place, and now these people are converging, and now we actually kind of have an idea of where this is going, which is another problem I had with this show, is that up until basically the end of this episode, I'm still wondering, like, what is the point of this show? Like, where is this going? Like, what are these people trying to accomplish? We've been introduced to all these different characters and all these different plot lines, but like, where is this going? Now we're starting to get an idea on where this is going. And once we start to actually move somewhere, assuming that we actually do move at a decent pace, this show could end up being great. But like I said, right so far it's been kind of a dull run. So I want to wrap up with a couple of thoughts. I already talked about liking the scene with Durin and his dad. That was them making amends after Elrond pushed Durin to do so. But something else I liked in that scene that I just thought was cool was Durin's father talked about how their crown passes down the information and the knowledge of generations to each person that wears the crown. I just thought that was like super cool. Like, you could put on a crown and now all of a sudden you have the knowledge of everything that preceded you. Like, that's so fucking cool. But I love knowledge, so of course I'm gonna think that's cool. And then there's an interesting scene with Theo and this guy who I guess previously had this sword hilt, because they share their forearm damage with one another. And the guy says that the starfall signals that Sauron's time is near. And that makes me wonder, is the stranger that's with the Harfoots, is that Sauron? Like, and I know we all collectively, I think as a community, are assuming it's Gandalf, and the show is trying to tell us it's Gandalf, but what if that's actually Sauron? That could be interesting too, and that would certainly be a way to wake up the boring fucking Harfoot storyline. So that's all I got there. Hopefully I won't get sick again, and I can get you guys my thoughts on episode 5 shortly after I watch it on Friday. But that's all I have for episode 4. I will see you guys next week. Until then, peace.